Well, hello, everyone. You can't see me yet. You will be able to see me soon. The load is loading, but you can hear me, and there I am. Hello, everyone. Welcome to another bonus off-season edition of the Missing Lynx post-game podcast. Somebody said live casts are like actual terminology, so maybe we'll officially name this thing. But until then, this is the Missing Lynx. I'm Andrew Dukowitz of Zone Coverage. We are part of the Hitting the Hardwood Network, and during the off season, we're going to have a couple of these episodes every month, probably every other week. With the CBA stuff up in the air, I do have plans to have a couple players come on this from the Lynx team to talk about more of their off the court life, maybe what they have recently done in college and what dissertations may have been about. But until more of that CBA stuff gets figured out, technically no one is affiliated with teams right now. Stay tuned. I hope to be able to do that. I'm pretty hopeful that the CBA stuff as a whole will get figured out. I think when Unrivaled happens, there will be some opportunity to get a couple players on the podcast then as well. I've been told that it's a something that players would like to do, and that it would be a lot of fun. So that's my news right off the top. This is going to be a Q&A type of episode where I asked Lynx people in the Discord, Lynx people in the group chats, the Los Lynx group chat, Emmy award-winning Vanshay, all sorts of people came out and gave some questions for this kind of Q&A, just off-season vibes type of episode. And, I figure we'll get right into it, which one of the first questions that we got over on the Lynx Discord was just, what is Fee's level of involvement with the CBA negotiations ever since she kind of lit the league on fire, which I did snoop around a little bit and talk to some people, and it sounds like she's still doing the same thing she's always been doing. She is co-player head with Brianna Stewart. She's still very involved with the negotiations, and she's still kind of plugging along, hoping that they can get the CBA worked out. I will say, another question that was asked over on the Lynx Discord was, are they going to be able to get this figured out by the time the October 31st deadline occurs? I'll say, unfortunately, that's not looking good. Obviously, things can get changed in a hurry. Deals can be made. Handshake agreements can be handshook on, but it sounds like they're really far apart. It sounds like on both sides, the WNBA side recently leaking out that, this is what we're offering salary wise to the players. And then journalists, people at ESPN did the math, found out that essentially the new salaries would amount to the same revenue percent that they currently have. And, the players are pretty firm on, we believe we deserve X, Y, and Z. We believe that we are going to get this, and we believe that we have all of the leverage, which I think, this might be one of the very few labor negotiations where the players truly do have all of the leverage, and they're going to use that because this is a CBA that could really, if it's done well, could be for the next 7 to 10 years of the WNBA's lifespan, which unfortunately, that means that 8 days from now, there is going to be a lockout. Again, I don't know what that means necessarily for teams and players. I think it's a really interesting time. Again, talking to people around the Lynx and people around the league, when a season ends, that's when, for all extensive purposes, that player's contract with the team ends. I mean, even you look at the Lynx, BC goes back home. Lan hangs around in town for a little bit, but then goes back to Australia. K-Mac goes back home. I mean, when the season's done, for all extensive purposes, they are done with their contract. And what that means is, none of these players really have affiliations with the team. So I don't know what a lockout would change for them. I mean, it's not like Kayla McBride is in the Lynx facility every day right now, and all of a sudden she's going to get locked out of it. It's not like any of these players are living in the team appointed apartments right now and they're going to have their locks changed while they're going to the grocery store. I do think for some players, Aubrey Griffin has been kind of around this team for the last year, probably affects her because she's going to lose some of that access. Ola Kosu is still under contract. I know she's playing in Russia right now, but theoretically, if she were to come back to the States, she wouldn't have access to the buildings or anything like that. And I think those things are going to be something to watch. But if I'm going to be kind of completely honest about it, I don't think it's going to be a really big change for, this team in general. I think for the most part, most players in the WNBA, season's over, they've gone on to their overseas responsibilities, unrivaled, went back home, and there's not going to be really any change with the lockout, other than I would not be surprised if, come November 1st, a lot more players start speaking out on certain things. When you're still technically under contract with the team and you're still technically hoping that this avoids a lockout, I think some players maybe hold their breath, hold their tongues a little bit. I think when that lockout officially happens, there's going to be a lot more players speaking out about some of the weird things that are coming out. Ben says Griffin went back to UConn. It's just a visit. I think she was just hanging out there. Jalen Sherrod, I think she's officially done with her contract, but like the Lynx are just, let's be honest, like they're a top class organization. They're not going to tell Jalen Sherrod to just like kick rocks. Dorka, I think it could affect if she decides she wants to come back next year. She's not going to be able to check in with the facility until that gets finalized. Another question, this one coming over from over on the Lynx Twitter group chat, was just how does the draft work? Again, asked around a little bit today. Draft is going to work just like it always has. None of the college players are affiliated with the WNBA Players Association. Even after they declare they are not affiliated with the WNBA Players Association, and the WNBA Coaches Association is separate from the Players Association. So come November 1st, Cheryl Reeve, Lindsay Whalen, Rebecca Brunson, Eric Thibault, they are all still employed by the Lynx. They are all going to be going and doing their scouts and doing their due diligence on what players they think would fit best for this team. And it sounds like that's going to be how this really, really happens. It's going to be just a normal scouting season for most of these staffs. I also will say the WNBA is planning on doing a draft lottery, and the lockout will not affect the draft. That seems a little weird. Again, I asked around a little bit, but it sounds like the WNBA is planning on doing a WNBA draft kind of just like normal. Now, none of the players drafted are going to be able to sign contracts with their new teams, nor will they know how much money they're going to make, nor do they know what their responsibilities are going to be, nor are they going to be able to show up to facilities or do anything after the draft, which maybe that throws a stick in the wheel and slows everything down at some point. But from my understanding is they're going to have a draft lottery. I don't want to speculate on when that'll be, just because that also could blow up if, the NCAA says, hey, we're not going to give up our college stars to go to a draft lottery for a league that might be locked out next year. NCAA is going to have a lot to say with that. But from what I understand, the draft is going to be just like normal times, that there'll be scouts, there'll be a combine, there'll be everything that there normally is after March Madness finishes up and during March Madness. And then they're going to just trudge forward regardless of CBA, at least in that capacity. Another question from the Lynx Discord was, what do we expect from an expansion draft? No one has any idea. Anyone that's posting anything is merely just kind of guessing, speculation. I reached out to another writer from a different market who said that they are pretty confident that it's going to be, each team can protect 5 players and it'll be after free agency. I pushed back a little bit saying, how can you do an expansion draft after free agency when free agents have signed with the team and, waited going to that team? And if you're only assured 5 protections, that means, some out of your 12 players that are going to be there from free agency, since 90% of the league is free agent, which would lead to me thinking that isn't going to work. I don't understand how kind of the minutia of that would work. Just with, I mean, if you're Bridget Carlton and you sign with the Golden State Valkyries to be like a number 2 piece to Veronica Burton, and then you don't get cored because they want to core whoever they decide to, and you get taken by Portland, I think BC would be pretty irritated. Rightfully so, because a lot of times when you're picking a team to play for, it's more than just like the jersey looks cool, right? It's facilities, where you're living, climate. For some of these people that have kids, like what schools are their kids going to go to during the season, or what daycares and summer schools are available. A lot goes into it. So I don't really know how an expansion draft would work. I have heard that maybe they will mess with the lottery process where the top 3 picks will still get divvied up, or the top 5 picks or whatever they decide to do will get divvied up by the draft. And then picks 6, 7, and picks 14 and 15. So the first 2 picks after the lottery and the first 2 picks of the second round, or at the end of the first round, would go to the new expansion teams. Again, I don't know how you make that works. I don't know how you make that work. Team that was eliminated early in the playoffs, like Golden State, probably would be pretty irritated by 2 new franchises getting picks ahead of them. But I don't know how you explain to 2 new franchises that, hey, you're not going to have an expansion draft. It just seems like a mess, which, the other thing that I've seen floated out there, at least like on Twitter and like WNBA chats and stuff, is maybe they decide to not have the expansion team start, which I think that has a whole can of worms too. Because how do you explain season ticket holders for the Tempo or for the Fire that, hey, you're not going to be going to games this year? Sandy Brondello just signed with Toronto. Now you're telling her she has to take a year off and do TV, which I would love Sandy on TV personally, but I don't think she would like that, judging by her signing a contract for this upcoming summer. It just seems like a colossal mess. And all of that is to say that once this lockout occurs, every week, every month that goes by is going to make this mess even messier, because it's going to continuously shrink the timeline. I mean, if you're looking at a draft in April after free agency, that means free agency needs to happen probably the beginning of March, which I mean, if you get a CBA done like January, maybe that can still happen. It's just going to be an exceptionally messy process that I wish I could say I had answers to, other than I have no answers. Me personally, I would say maybe in the CBA you carve out some extra money or some extra, you know, incentives to sign with one of the new expansion teams. I mean, Portland, I think, will be a very desirable place to play. Toronto, wonderful basketball city, wonderful city in general. I think players will be motivated to go play there. Toronto in the summer is a lot better than playing for the Raptors in the winter. I do think there are things that they could do salary structure wise to maybe avoid an expansion draft. But then if you're one of the existing WNBA teams, I'm sure you're going to feel a certain way that the 2 new teams are getting the leg up on star players over, you trying to re-sign your own stars. I think of like the Liberty, which, Brianna Stewart, Sabrina, Tosh Cloud, Jones, like if you're giving Toronto a leg up over the Liberty probably aren't going to be able to pay all 4 of them max contracts, regardless of what the CBA looks like. And now they're probably feeling a certain way that Toronto could go out there and steal their players, which again is messy. I really don't know if there's a good answer for what these expansion teams are going to get. And that might be just kind of how it is. There isn't going to be a good answer. And no matter what, some fan bases are going to be kind of ticked off, whether that's the expansion fan bases, whether that's existing fan bases. I think this is going to get messy for those new teams. Now, on the CBA side, we talked about it earlier. Does it have a chance to finish by October? I don't think so. But what are kind of the sticking points? Someone asked over on Twitter. I would say sticking points right now, obviously the revenue sharing. The players have been really good at not leaking what their percentages that they are asking for. I think it's logical to assume that it's probably in the 40% range. I don't think, I don't think the players would be coming out and saying we deserve a 50-50 split just like the NBA does. I think they realize that this CBA is probably a bridge to a future CBA, but I don't think it's close. Again, the WNBA, kind of put out some stuff recently of just like what the veteran minimum salaries would go to, what the actual salaries would go to. And to be honest, if you do the math on it of like what they are going to be getting from new TV contracts and new merchandise deals, and then you kind of, trickle down the math to see what the percentages would be, and it is a negligible gain for the players. The league has been putting out a lot of stuff about like we want it to be an incremental rise, which that is the exact same stuff the league was putting into the 2019 CBA. COVID happened. They were never able to hit any of those gains because they essentially, they were never able to hit those measures because they essentially lost 2 years of basketball. And the WNBA just kind of said, go kick rocks, and kept them at that 9.3% that they're at today. I would feel that the players are not looking for a deal that way again, which again makes sense. You got burned on an incremental deal the last time. Who's to say we're not going to have another pandemic? Who's to say like there's not going to be, some crazy thing happening in this world that's going to cause a season to be cut short or missed, and then you're in the same position. Like I think the players are probably looking more for like a raw number that just shows, support in them. And the other thing that I think they're really hung up on is a lot of the just quality of life stuff, whether that is, player housing. How do they get it so it's more uniformed, where whether you're playing in Chicago, Minnesota, Dallas, Connecticut, you're getting a same quality of living, same apartment, same kind of neighborhood, same, like equal playing field for living. Because again, some of these teams pay a lot on their apartments and go a little overboard, and other teams don't go up to the level that they probably need to, and that stuff matters. Training facilities is another thing that's, a sticking point. You have currently where some teams share practice facilities with the public. You have some that share it with colleges. You have some like the Lynx who share it with the Wolves. You have some that have their own facilities, and there's no real regulation on it, which I'll be honest, I think, being someone that covers the Lynx and that is rooting for kind of their success and winning a championship, I think that's great that there's parity, because the Lynx can use that as like a talking point to bring free agents in. But, I know that is something where, you look at Paige Beckers being drafted in Dallas, her situation is not quite as good as if she would have been drafted other places. And that is a sticking point with the CBA, is how to get this to just be uniformed. After retirement health insurance, always something that I think every league is constantly negotiating. And, that's a whole can of worms too, with, where health insurance is in the United States. I think the other big piece that is going to be talked about a lot, especially once Unrivaled starts, is a non-compete league. The WNBA, from my understanding, really wants these players to have non-compete contracts where they are not playing overseas in the off season. They're not playing at Unrivaled. I did kind of a short form post on X a few weeks ago about it, just like detailing what players get paid overseas. And like, let's be honest, if the WNBA wanted to do a non-compete, they'd have to increase salaries by like 40 to 50% just off the top to make up for what the players would lose by not being able to go overseas. Unrivaled pays players, quite frankly, better than the WNBA pays their players. So if you factor the Unrivaleds, the star players making that much money in the secondary league or the supplementary league, that again, there I want to just be clear. Like, I am in the firm belief that like Unrivaled and the WNBA are not competing. They do not take place at the same time. WNBA doesn't really have anything competing with it right now. Unrivaled is competing with EuroLeague, Australian League, Russian League, like that. That is what Unrivaled is competing against. But these players make a lot of money in Unrivaled. And if the WNBA wants to make them sign non-compete clauses and give up Unrivaled, gotta improve. You just gotta improve those contracts, which again, if they're not willing to budge on the percentage for contracts, it makes me feel like they're probably not budging a whole lot on the non-compete side of contracts. And unfortunately for the WNBA, these players kind of know that they don't really need the WNBA right now. Like, they can't. I guarantee you, if Caitlin Clark goes to the Australian League and plays in Melbourne, people are going to watch Melbourne. Pepperman Mark asks, what will happen to Unrivaled League? I think if they were to get a non-compete in, if let's say the WNBA says, yep, we are going to make the veteran minimum $600,000 and max contracts $8 million, which would represent like a 40% revenue share and kick in extra for the players that would have to play overseas. I truly believe, like, if that was the case, Fee and Brianna Stewart would probably have like a 1-year fold down of the league and they'd let it go. Being around Fee, I don't think starting Unrivaled was ever about sticking it to the WNBA. I think it was truly about getting players paid so that they can stay in the United States during the offseason. You look at players like Dejanay Carrington, Alana Smith, Courtney, like all of those players are players that are probably making more in Unrivaled right now. But if they weren't in Unrivaled, they'd be playing in Europe right now. And for players like, Lan, who is getting to spend time in Australia instead of going directly to the Chinese basketball league like she did last year, that matters. Like, that stuff matters. So I do think Stewie would fold that league if they needed to. I also think it's really important to just mention that like this league, when Fee and Stewie came up with this concept, they went to the WNBA to partner with them. And the WNBA, I mean, they probably said it nicer, I would hope, but they kind of said just go kick rocks, which, I, makes me think that the WNBA didn't think that this would be something that would actually be successful and that players would rally behind it. But the initial offer was, hey, WNBA, let's do this together so that we can like grow the game together. And then WNBA said no, and Fee and Stewie went off and did their thing. So I think if the league paid them appropriately from top to bottom to represent like a non-compete, I think they would just be okay folding the league over a couple of years and move on with their lives and be happy that they, ran a league and made a difference and brought a new CBA in. That does bring another question, though, that I know is a talking point, is regular season length, which Depending who you ask, it sounds like the WNBA is shooting from anywhere to 50 to 60 games. Really hard to have a league go 60 games and then have your players also play overseas, which would again, to me, just kind of say that that would require that non-compete, or at least like you can't play in both leagues the same season, kind of like the NBA and EuroLeague have, where like, sure, players can terminate their NBA contract and go to the EuroLeague or get a buyout and go to the EuroLeague. Nikola Mirotic is probably the most recent example of that. But like, you can't play in EuroLeague and then the NBA and then EuroLeague and then the NBA. Like, you can only do EuroLeague to NBA, from my understanding, unless you get like express kind of permission for your salary. Have a few more questions on the docket to get to, but first I am going to run some ads here. I am going to drink some Diet Mountain Dew and recaffeinate myself. For people who don't know, I also cover the Wolves, and woof, was I up too late last night. So caffeine for me, ads for you. Well, hello. Thank you, Livestream Andrew. This is Ad Read Andrew. And today we have Firehawk Construction and Remodeling, the presenting sponsor for the Missing Lynx podcast. Firehawk Construction and Remodeling strives to inspire people to follow their ideas, working with respect and understanding to create a quality, tailored result. Firehawk Construction and Remodeling, located in Blaine and serving in the North Metro area, is here to help you with your building and remodeling needs. I can say personally, thanks to Firehawk Construction and Remodeling, I have a beautiful deck in my backyard, and countless projects that I started, they finished. Get started on your new deck or remodel today by calling Isaac at 763-710-5686. And we're back with another ad read. This time for Pence Homes, the presenting sponsor of Hitting the Hardwood Network. From the best tools and technology to transparency throughout the entire process, Nate Pence and the Pence Homes team is the top choice for buyers, sellers, and is proud to support you and your home ownership goals. Get started today by calling 612-308-1122 or by emailing info@pencehomes.com. Shout out Firehawk and Nate Pence for not only presenting the Missing Lynx podcast, but also the Missing Wolves, and making all of this possible. It is wild to be talking about basketball and having sponsors. So shout out to both of those guys. So back to kind of the docket. Lynx jerseys. I got asked this by quite a few people because the Wolves just came out and kind of killed it. Let's be honest. The Trees jerseys are back. The Prince jerseys are back. They're keeping the black, the white, and the blues. They just kind of kudos to the Wolves. I'll be honest. Like, if we could get the First Ave jerseys back for the Lynx, I think that would be really cool. Even if they did the throwback Mayo Clinic jerseys for like Mayo Moore, like, I think that would be pretty cool. I don't know. I wish I could sit here and say like, yep, there's a rebrand coming up. We're going to have new jerseys. They're going to make Prince collabs. They're going to bring the Trees to the Lynx. I just don't know. What I will say is I think A-Rod and Lori, at least from my understanding from people in the organization, is that they are really committed to doing right by the fans, not just on the Wolves side, but on the Lynx side as well. So if Lynx fans are saying, hey, we want a new jersey, hey, we want to get a different alternate, hey, we want the Rebel jerseys to be our permanent home jerseys, and let's get a new away jersey, like, I feel pretty confident in saying that A-Rod and Lori are listening. And if there is enough of a public push for a rebrand, I wouldn't be surprised if there's at least something that comes out this next year. I did think it was a little odd that the Lynx didn't even have a new hashtag this year. Some of that might have been because of the ownership and just kind of how it switched, which, if you haven't read that Pablo Torre piece or listened to that podcast about Glenn Taylor, I would recommend it. It was kind of insightful to see just how wild this last year was for all parties involved. but that was happening right when the Lynx would have been trying to figure out if they want to do a new jersey or if they want a new hashtag or what they want to do. That being said, I don't know. I haven't heard really anything that there is going to be or is not. I would just say, like, what they did with the Wolves would give me a lot of hope that there's going to be something with the Lynx, whether that's a new jersey, whether that's bringing something back, whether that's fans yelling at the top of their lungs to change the look of it and rebrand it. But I would feel pretty confident that like something will come. I mean, I can't do a third straight year of Lynx recognized. We need at least a better hashtag. Maybe not take root. I don't know how big of a fan of take root with the old logo. I will stand by is pretty dope, but Lynx recognized. Too many characters in Lynx recognized. Another question is, when will we start to hear when players will start re-signing or when that stuff will start to be leaked? CBA would have to get figured out first. I do think at Unrivaled, again, CBA expires beginning of November. Unrivaled is going to be starting a couple months after that. You might be seeing some stuff from players saying they want to go back to where they were, or they want to team up with certain players. I mean, when you get that many people in one city with that many cameras on them, like, stuff will get leaked, which, I think January, theoretically, hopefully, that's when we start to see something going on. But, it's that's just grasping at straws, to be honest, of maybe we'll get news by then. Another question that we got here is, what do players and coaches do to train over the off season? I'll be honest, I did snoop around on this one a little bit. What I heard back about the Lynx is that the Lynx, even in a lockout off season, are very structured, and they really do the off season. And this is like training staff, coaches. They treat the off season the same every year. They send out assistant coaches and scouts to go watch college games, interview coaches, interview players, meet with people, and really start that draft process from pretty well right after the season ends. Especially as, right now the college season's kind of picking up to start. Yeah, they treat it just like another month, another week, just another kind of day in the office. I think it's a little different when there's some coaching turnover, but again, the people I know, cover the Lynx, and the Lynx haven't had a whole lot of turnover in a long time. It did sound like the Katie Smith changing, going to Ohio State, kind of threw a little bit of a monkey wrench into it. And then, they added Eric and Way this year, but both of them were doing scouts and stuff over the summer. So seems like that's kind of their jam. For players, it kind of goes a couple different ways. Some players go overseas and they get like a week or two off, and then they are playing basketball with their overseas team. From what I understand, that relationship kind of differs by team. There are some teams in EuroLeague and kind of around the world that have good relationships with the NBA teams. And, if the Lynx were to reach out and say, hey, we're really hoping that, like, let's say Diamond Miller last year, who went and played in Poland, like, hey, we're really hoping Diamond gets better at XYZ. The coaching staff over there will go, okay, well, we can spend a little time on XYZ, and we will, hopefully you'll see some improvements. Other teams, hey, we'd like to see improvements on XYZ, and they just get left on red, and the player shows back up in training camp, and it is what it is. It sounds like it's more like, some teams just develop relationships because players sign there. Because, if you get a good relationship with the team, that team's more likely to say, hey, why don't you go play for this team? Kind of a you scratch my back, I'll scratch yours type of situation. Other players, when you're looking at people like Nafisa Collier, this offseason is going to be a lot of rehab until Unrivaled. I'll say the kind of common thread I've seen, though, is a lot of players after the season, if they don't need to go overseas right away, just turn off for a couple weeks or a month or a couple months. Courtney last year joked at media day that it was the first time she actually did workouts in the off season. So there are players that were like 2023 Courtney Williams who just didn't do anything until they have to come back and play basketball. There are players that work really hard with trainers. It just kind of depends. The genuine vibe I got though is that a lot of players just unplug for a little while, just kind of go back home, see friends, live a normal life for at least a couple weeks before they start getting back into the gym and kind of working on things again, which I will also say is very common for the NBA as well. A lot of guys travel, a lot of WNBA players travel just to kind of decompress from a very long season, healed mind, body, soul, whatever you want to consider it. But again, different for everybody, but I think a little bit of time off kind of makes sense. Couple more questions that we had here. Couple people, well, one person and another person asked very similar questions. What are the odds of getting a behind the scenes type starting five type of documentary for the WNBA? Pretty good. If the CBA goes well and it gets finalized, I think that is a definite possibility. Again, you look at who has the contract, the biggest TV contract coming up with the WNBA. It is Disney, ESPN, and Amazon. I think they would love to have a starting five style WNBA type of content where you're seeing Fee behind the scenes, or you're seeing Asia and Bam, or you're seeing Skylar Diggins and what her life is like. Like, I think that is, I would say I would expect that in the next 3 or 4 years. I mean, the NFL's receiver went really well. Starting five has been like a smash hit. Quarterbacks a few years ago went really well for the NFL. And I think the WNBA, at least what they have learned from stud buds this year, is that people love that off the court, like, just glimpses into these players' lives. So again, I can't confirm nor deny it, but I would say that I would expect it. Another jersey question. Again, wish I had any answers. I really hope they bring back the first Av ones personally, but overseas contracts, what are those like? Kind of touched on it a little bit, but like, it's so different for every player. There are some players that sign month to month contracts where they get put in team housing and they get paid between, like, honestly, when I was doing research on it, like, some players get paid like $2,000 a month to go play overseas. Others can make into the like 25,000, 50,000 range. Really depends what league you go to, what they pay for on your housing. Some players refuse to do the housing and just pocket it and live in, crash with friends. Teammates become roommates and they split the money. Like, it sounds like the overseas contracts are honestly a lot like just the wild, wild west. There isn't a whole lot of rules, and whatever you can kind of get for yourself as a hired gun, that's what they try and get for themselves. I will say, like, the Australian basketball league that is starting to get some steam. That's where Alyssa Peely went to go play this winter. I think they are trying to get more infrastructure in it than maybe EuroLeague, like the Turkish league, Russian league, things like that, where it's just more like stability. But I honestly think that might be more because the Australian league just recognizes that they have a chance to really capitalize on a league right now. But honestly, overseas contracts, I know the Malunga stuff kind of came up in the news. Like, there just isn't a whole lot of rules for them. It's really whatever the player can get from a team and whatever the team wants to pay them, and then whatever perks are kind of paid on the side. Sometimes it's a shoe deal with Puma or something like that pays them. Other times it's team directly. It's a messy situation is what I would say. Last question here that I'll answer, again from the Lynx Discord, was just, what is the vibe of Mark Lowry and Alex Rodriguez? I'll be honest, like, I haven't gotten a chance to talk to either of them. They did a Q&A in Vegas that They answered a lot of questions about just the future of the organization, where they tend to take things. I think people in the know were a little, and not people in the know, but like fans and just people that are like generally paying attention to the organization. There was a lot of people that got let go, including, you know, the CEO and different people at various levels of the organization this summer. And you know, I think that rightfully kind of freaked some people out, but my, I guess, hot take is I'm pretty excited for the new ownership. Nothing I have seen or heard tells me that they are not willing to put money in to be competitive. I can look at the Timberwolves side, and they are right up against the second apron, and they are paying a ton of money in tax on that roster. They are paying a ton of money in coaching staff, whether it's Pablo Prigioni, who got head coaching opportunities, Mike Nori, who got head coaching opportunities, heck, even C Hines, their development guy, is like highly sought after like being Ant's development guy. All of those guys are being taken care of. On the Lynx side of it, you know, I think they are very understanding that this is a premier franchise that players want to come and play with. And this is a franchise that has a lot of history behind it. And all I can say is Cheryl Reeve, without being asked on her exit interview, really gave a big nod of approval to working with A-Rod and Lori and kind of the excitement she had, which if Cheryl is saying that she's excited to work with someone, I'm excited to work with someone. I trust her judgment. I would expect that, you know, they're going to continue putting money into this team, that they are going to continue supporting this team. I'll also say, like, I thought it was really telling that Fee had her statements. And I think a lot of owners around the league maybe would have distanced themselves from that statement, you know, saying, you know, well, we support Nafisa Collier, we don't stand by her statements or anything like that. A-Rod and Lori didn't say anything. They didn't come out against it. They didn't come out for it. I think that says a lot, because that's letting your player essentially light the ownership on fire, and you're not, you know, disciplining, you're not coming out against it, you're not slapping her on the wrist, nothing. They stayed quiet, which I think is a powerful sign of support, oddly enough. Like, sure, they could have come out and said, we stand by Nafisa Collier, let's get this CBA done, but a lot of owners, I think, would have distanced themselves from Fee immediately. So I like the vibes. I think it's going to be a good partnership. Really, only time will tell. I know that's kind of a cop-out finish to the answer. You know, they are eager to get a stadium. I think they are eager to get a stadium in which the Lynx and Wolves are together and still paired together, playing in the same place. I know that, you know, A-Rod and Lori are both very supportive of like women's sports. So I feel pretty confident that this is going to be a good partnership. And again, I just finish it by saying Cheryl says they're good. I'm not going to argue with Cheryl. I have learned that she's normally right on a lot of things. So not a whole lot for me to argue about. But that is it for questions. I think I got through all of them, at least the ones that I saw and wrote down. 43 minutes into a Q&A podcast. Thank you for everyone that's listening. Thank you for the 200 people that have come through here to check out a Q&A podcast in October on the WNBA. Well, there are NBA games going on. I will always say, Lynx fans, you guys are crazy, because this is the type of support that, like, it makes it all possible. This was the bet that everyone at Hitting the Hardwood, me, Terry, and Mitch all took out there and said that Lynx fans deserve content. So I will be putting out another episode in 2 weeks here. Again, I do plan to have hopefully some player interviews over the summer, or not over the summer, over the winter. I've been led to believe that that's a possibility, but unfortunately, just like everybody else, I'm waiting for the CBA to get figured out before I have an answer on that. So thank you, everyone, for tuning in. If you are missing my voice, I will say that I am doing Wolves post-game podcasts after every game. after the player speech, much like I did with this podcast throughout the Lynx season. I am going to have some of my Lynx guests on there. Elmo is going to be returning. Terry and Mitch both will be on it at some point, and there will be quite a few personalities on there from just the local Twin Cities media scene as well. But thank you everyone for listening. If you came in late, this will be up tomorrow morning, anywhere you listen to your podcasts. And until the next Lynx game, we'll leave it with just a go Lynx.